Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. This is our fourth webinar of our new series that we've been running since November. And we are going to talk today about OpentoBuy merchandise planning. Specifically, we're going to talk about navigating seasonal merchandise from shelf life to OpentoBuy planning. So before we do that, we'll do some quick introductions. I will mention first, we are recording this session. So after the live session, the recorded link will be sent around to everyone. Also, feel free to ask questions. There is a question pane on the GoToWebinar section on the right-hand side there. Ask any questions you have. We're going to save 10 or 15 minutes at the end to go through all of the questions, and we encourage them. So first, some quick introductions. We have Jeff Sward here joining us today, who is the founder of Merchandising Metrics. We have Dmitry, who is the CEO of Ant USA. We've been partnered with Ant USA now for, I don't even know how many years, but a very long time. Also, Jeff Dillon, Director of Operations from Ant USA. And my name is Michele Salerno, and I am the CGO here at Celerant. So we have a whole mix of retailers on today's call, like we always do, which is exciting. We have a lot of Celerant retailers who are using our software. We also have a lot of Ant USA retailers who may not be using our software, and then just a mix of a lot of different people in between. So for those of you who don't know who we are at Celerant, we are a retail software provider. We've been in the industry for over 25 years. Really where we pride ourselves is we are an all-in-one, sort of a one-stop shop for retailers. We help our retailers manage their entire brick and mortar side of the business, as well as all of their online sales, from integrated e-commerce to mobile shopping apps, even digital marketing like email marketing and SEO services. We have about 225 team members all over the country and even international. We do have 7 offices. I work out of our main office, which is in New Jersey, but we have 2,000 clients. I think between all of those retailers, it represents probably 4,500 storefronts. And like I said, we've been serving the industry for over 25 years. We have 2 products. We have Cumulus Retail, that is our software system that's meant for more for small business. And then we have Stratus Enterprise, which is our advanced retail solution. And another big differentiator is with us, retailers can start small with Cumulus and then add on as they need more advanced functionality, and hopefully eventually have that upgrade path to Stratus as they become a larger retail business. So I'm going to flip it over to Jeff Dillon, who will introduce Ant USA for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Michele. One of the exciting things about our partnership with Celerant is the parallels, that the length of our relationship, and certainly the length of time we've been in business. We go down a path that is a little beyond, what they do as far as your day-to-day operation of your business, and we focus entirely on merchandise financial planning, OpentoBuy planning, inventory optimization. So we really plug into their systems seamlessly. Just like Celerant, we have a start where you are and then grow into the bigger product approach to our business. And we have plugins for both of them. So we are scalable. We have retail customers of every imaginable size, $1 million to $1 billion. Many stores, just a couple stores. We can help you plan your merchandise assortments and manage your inventory better.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Up next, we have Jeff Sward with Merchandising Metrics.
Thanks, Michele. Yeah, I think I'll start by saying I grew up in the department store business, Macy's and Saks, moved on to specialty store business with Abercrombie and American Eagle, and then moved into wholesale, Polo Ralph Lauren, Donna Karan, So my exposure embraces department stores, specialty stores, product development, brand development, sourcing. And these days I work with brands and retailers, I guess most simply said, on strategic planning.
Excellent. Well, we've got some real experts here today. And like I mentioned, this is our fourth series of this, our fourth session of this series. Can't speak today. And so there's a lot to discuss and unpack as you talk about open to buy and merchandise planning. It could be a very, complicated or comprehensive system, and there's a lot of different aspects to it. So we are breaking it into much smaller, more digestible chunks. And so today we are specifically focusing on seasonal planning. And there's a lot of layers to seasonal planning. When you talk about seasonal, it's not just Christmas. There's many, many more, and it goes all throughout the entire calendar year. So we're going to understand the event merchandising calendars, take a better look at all the different holidays and seasons and the entry points and the exit points, and how to adapt strategies across all of these different categories. Minimizing product entry and exit dates. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, and this might have to be our next session, we'll see, but predicting demand during economic volatility, external factors, tariffs, consumer confidence, all the different things that are going on that make it really challenging for retailers. And so we'll touch on that towards the end. And of course, we'll talk more about that in future sessions as well. So as usual, we are going to kick it off with a poll question, because we really like to get everybody engaged and we like to see how everybody responds so that we can then shift our talking points based on that. So I'm going to pull up the first poll here. So the question is, how do I know if I have the right strategic mix of seasonal and non-seasonal products? So I just launched that. How do I know if I have the right strategic mix of seasonal and non-seasonal products? The answers, of course, are based on my experience. I have planned for it. I'm not sure how. It's vendor driven, or honestly, I never really thought about it. So go ahead, everybody, and make your selections. And this is very interesting. But let's give it another minute because there we go. Okay, now they're all rolling in. I was thinking, how can we have 100% on just one? All right, so 77% of you have voted. So I'll give it another couple of seconds. Just click whatever box is most applicable. We're at 92%. So I am going to close it and let's take a look. All right. 50% have planned for it, 33% based on my experience, and then 8% not sure how, 8% vendor driven. So Dmitry, let's talk through this a little bit, through these results.
So I think that's awesome. First of all, that's honestly that's a higher percentage of the first two answers than I would have expected. And
by the way, Dmitry, I'll just add at first for the first 30 seconds, 100% were at I have planned for it. So that's why I was like, but then it started to shift really quickly.
No, but seriously, that means a couple of things to me. One is it's top of mind for a lot of people because nobody really said I haven't thought about it. Number two is everybody's got a heavily seasonal business, right? So that's we should be right on topic. I would think the poisonous answer that only a few people said is it's vendor driven. That's the one I would tend to argue with if that came up high, but that's really good. Like that's really strong audience here.
All right, so let me close that. So now we'll look at seasonality awareness and the flow, the what and the when. Jeff Sward, take us away on this one.
Yeah, this is actually just a really simple graphic to begin the conversation, really at a macro level, in suggesting that in each of the 12 months, there's a sales opportunity that is most important. But more important, maybe, or as important, is how the inventory is positioned to address that sales opportunity. I used to think of OpentoBuy as simply receipt planning. And I think something that Dmitry said in the first OpentoBuy session has really stuck with me, and that OpentoBuy is an opportunity to plan the positioning of your inventory for a series of entries and exits out of seasonal product. And it is that positioning of the inventory along with the sales opportunity that creates the OpentoBuy calculation, so that you're entering at the right time, you're exiting at the right time, you're peaking at the right time. So it is that positioning of inventory that has really stuck with me.
Yeah, what this does for me is just reinforce what Michele said earlier, and that seasonality is more than just Christmas. And we know it, but to really document it in your company-wide calendar, that there are, clearly Father's Day, Mother's Day, there are events throughout the entire year. And again, like Dmitry, I'm excited to see that so many of you consider this, but we just beg that you consider it real deeply and broadly with regards to the inventory position, as Jeff mentioned. What is my commitment to this season, this month? Am I going to buy 100%, 90%, 110%? When am I bringing it in? What's my risk tolerance? All of those entries, exits, timings are really key for each one of them, and they could differ.
Actually, Michele, could you go back one slide? I want to say something
Sure.
else.
Of course.
I thought something. We have customers that create seasonality out of thin air. So in other words, if you think about fast fashion, right? And for those of you that buy fast fashion clothes, or perhaps partners or spouses do, right? Some of them literally create monthly drops. So if you think about that, right? You could be selling socks, and in theory, socks are non-seasonal, right? Or something like that. And yet, they artificially create monthly, floor sets, remove the product, and so they create newness. So seasonality isn't just a way of responding to weather changes, right? Seasonality can also be, artificial seasonality can also be a way to create newness, right? By rotating the product through the stores, and therefore, presumably pick up, consumer demand that way. And entire businesses, from small boutiques to somebody as large as Zara, Inditex, which is like, I don't know, many, many billions of dollars, have built their business models around this kind of artificial seasonality, right? So a monthly drop, like that's how they often think about it.
Mm-hmm. And then Jeff, you mentioned about all the different holidays, and so that's a perfect segue into this key calendar events, and you can see all throughout the year all the different events. Jeff, this graphic you actually created, I think you said 15 years ago, but it still rings true. I mean, it doesn't change, right? So we've updated the way the graphic looks a little bit, but it's at the core, it's the same concept that's been most important for all these years.
And this is really, I mean, these are the holidays maybe, or the calendar events that lots of businesses could revolve around, but it's merely meant to suggest that throughout the year, there's a never-ending series of overlapping events that you have to take into consideration all of the different peaks and valleys that you're going through and they have to be managed simultaneously as you're entering one, exiting another. And that, I would just encourage every business to understand what is the more detailed calendar that would demonstrate this kind of flow, but what is the more detailed calendar that they can challenge themselves with? Are they taking advantage of all of the key opportunities along the way to take advantage of naturally occurring events?
What I have in my head now is what Dmitry was mentioning, to layer into this, then basically merchandise seasons also, I think, is another way of saying, the fast fashion monthly turns, monthly exposures of different merchandise. And then when we layer that in, and then layer in the attributes of historical sales and inventory position and inventory merchandise to be able to assign it well to these groups for analysis is the next layer. There's a lot of moving parts to all of this is what we're getting at. But how do I model my data to then do analysis and understand all of this well?
And sometimes it's a separate channels. For example, in some luxury product, there's the idea of trunk shows, right? What's a trunk show? It's in effect a vendor-driven promotional period. So anybody that's multi-branded, right? Even if you're selling the same thing over and over and over again, you can introduce artificial seasonality by saying, May is vendor A month and April is vendor B month or something like that. And the reason for that is the seasonal shoulders, right, provide this opportunity to basically switch out the buying, the consumer patterns, and it seems to stimulate demand almost anything in almost anything you're selling. Even supermarkets do that, right? You get Cheez-Its one day and you get graham crackers another day, and they're real good at rotating those end caps. And why, right? So this is like a constant stirring of the pot, using both the weather-driven, vendor-driven, and, like I said, even completely synthetic artificial kind of event calendar, like a floor change.
Keeping it all moving.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next poll question. How detailed is your open to buy for your seasonal merchandise flow? So let me pop up this next question here. There we go. I just launched it. So again, how detailed is your open to buy for your seasonal merchandise flow? We plan at the department level, or we plan at the department level plus the category classification level. Next option is we do all that plus the seasonality level or risk level. And then the last option is I just let my buyers decide. All right, we got some responses coming in. Don't be shy. Click whichever one makes the most sense. We've got 14% voted, 36% voted. All right. All right, we still have, there we go, 43%. All right, keep the votes coming in. I'll leave it open for another couple of seconds. We only have half that have voted, so if you're on the session, take a look and click the box that's most applicable.
And we can't tell who answers what, if that helps.
Right. Yeah, this is anonymous. We don't know.
The way you presented the last option, Michele, I'd be a little afraid to click that one.
The tone it says it all, right? All right, well, I am going to close it. Oh, nope, I'm not yet. People are still clicking. So let me give it another second. All right, I'm going to close it. We don't have all the votes in, but that is okay. And let me share it. And Dmitry, why don't you go ahead and read through the results?
So a couple of things. for a lot of people, sort of classes as seasonal, right? So if you're selling, rain boots, you're really planning at a category that's a seasonal category. If you're selling, warm, heavy outerwear, that's probably in the winter, and so on and so forth. So to me, like, numbers 2 and number 3 are mixed. That last one I don't quite get, because that doesn't jive with the 8% that answered the first question. That I'm not sure. So either, if you have very experienced buyers, I guess then they do their own thing. I'm usually not a huge fan of having the buyers plan the buys, because the buyers are always optimists, and they're in fairly close contact with the vendors, and so that's one of the ways you end up overbuying, and the risk of a seasonal plan, or risk of any kind of a season, is there's the beginning of the season, high season, and then there's the end of the season. And by the end of the season, presumably you want to have very little of that stuff. Again, whether that's a monthly drop, or whether that's spring, or high summer, or something like that. So but about half the answers are a little worrisome. You should always help your buyers, from our perspective, you should always help your buyers decide, right? It's a little bit like sometimes it's a kid in the candy store effect. So.
All right. So next, we are going to talk through planning buckets for seasonality, and really just all the entries and exits of all 4 layers simultaneously, which can get quite complex.
And we
So
keep
Jeff,
adding layers.
Jeff, I'll put this first slide up here. This is the first 2 layers. You can start talking through there.
Well, like you said, Michele, we're ultimately going to talk about 4 layers, but the first 2 just represent the most simple breakdown of product in my mind, and that would be where you've got a group of product that I refer to as core essentials, or product that lends itself to ongoing replenishment. They live by some kind of min-max model, and they just get replenished over the course of the year. And then the next layer is the broadest definition of seasonality, which is simply saying, well, I want to buy a lot of stuff for spring, summer, and then I want to buy a lot of stuff for fall, winter. And that's really not enough detail to really drill into. So we then add, and here's where I call, seasonal key items. And actually, I'll say that differently. It's not that it's not enough layer of detail. It's that there is a layer of product that I refer to as seasonal key items, which absolutely have 6-month life. They can come in at the beginning of the season. They last toward the end of the season. If it's apparel, that it isn't, maybe a whole lot different from last year's seasonal key item. It could very well be the same. It's just seasonal. It's appropriate for spring, summer, or it's appropriate for fall, winter. But it's that 6-month lifespan, that 6-month shelf life that really defines it.
All right, now we bring in our third.
Now we get into the shorter lifespan, shorter shelf life product. In apparel, it's a level that I simply call Fashion 1, and it begins to address what Dmitry referred to earlier as the fashion drops. Here, the level of fashion or novelty has elevated, and by design, on purpose, this product has a shorter shelf life because you want it to create flow within the business. It's not intended to live 6 months. So now it begins to recognize much more of a buy now, wear now, or in non-apparel, a buy now, use now mentality, where it's just got it's simply by definition got a shorter shelf life. Spring, summer, fall, winter. And finally, you really begin to recognize what I think is a more accurate portrayal of the calendar, where you've got transition windows that recognize the very difficult seasonal change between winter and spring, between summer and fall. It's, again, to Dmitry's earlier point, product that is designed to drop in, shorter lifespan, and create that flow and that freshness in the business. Or, like it says in some of the parentheses, it can be very specific event driven. So each of these layers has a different role in the eyes of the consumer, but at any given moment on an apparel floor, they all exist at once, and each of them have to be planned for their entries and exits simultaneously.
And this is reinforcing in my mind once again that this is three-dimensional. On top of this, we've got even more granular detail than what we're seeing here. There's not 6 events, there's many others, as Dmitry was alluding to. And then there's the need to understand each individual lowest level event, but then to roll it up and down and left and right in your data analysis at all times to really understand the impact across the enterprise on the sum of each of these individual events, i.e. your sales forecast, and then to take that to the next level and assure your inventory position is right at each one, and then rolled up to your total spend, i.e. open to buy, dynamics in all of this. So it's it can get complicated. There's a lot going on. It's very, very dimensional. It's not a flat sheet. Your businesses. We get that.
So I've got 2 simplification rules. One that Jeff's right. Both Jeffs are entirely right? That's why we've been doing this for over 30 years and we're still learning, honestly. So a couple of comments. I was planning with a customer of ours last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, a few days ago, I should say, right? And we're planning a pure replenishment category. And the replenishment category is birdseed. You bring the bag, you sell the bag, you bring the bag, you sell the bag. It sells all year long, except for 3 or 4 months in the year. All of a sudden, it looks like it's slowing down. Why is it slowing down? Nobody can tell, right? But it doesn't, all of a sudden, instead of having 3 weeks of birdseed, you're running at 5 or 6 weeks of birdseed. Is that healthy, unhealthy? It turns out that if you go back to the idea of classifications and categories, a lot of it is in the way your hierarchy is structured. So in that case, birdseed included chicken feed. Now, you sell a lot of chicken feed. It doubles the amount of, because it's wild bird seed and chicken feed. I know it sounds funny, but they sell like probably $50 million a year worth of that stuff, right? So that's a good example of a hierarchy, which is one of the topics we covered probably in the second or third webinar. So for those of you who haven't seen it, you should probably go back and think about it. Relook at it. The hierarchy, if it's incorrectly done, blends away and hides the information that you need to make good decisions. In their case, they would have planned birdseed, wild birdseed all year round, and treated chicken feed as a seasonal product because you only need it for 3 or 4 months a year, and then your egg season is over. That's one. So that's a scenario where replenishment is kind of fire and forget, and people don't think about the fact that there are different, that it flows within the replenishment essentials as well. And then the last thing I want to say on the bottom, so the further down you go down this hierarchy of detail, there's a very simple rule for like a 2 months or a 1 month selling season. Don't buy towards the end of the season. Like in other words, if it's a 2 month season, bring the stuff in for the first months, right? Sell it off in the first and second months, and make sure your receipts are not coming in as the season is over. So the late receipts is what ends up clogging up your cash and killing your open to buy because it's too late and you move from summer to transition, from transition to fall, and so on and so forth. It's a very, very simple rule. The shorter the season, the more ruthless you have to be about late receipts in that season, right? You don't want to have any road salt once stuff is melted, right? You're going to own it for the year. That's an extreme example.
But Dmitry, you told me not to front load. Well, there's times in those short seasons where that's what you do. And then there's other factors there. Again, am I committing 90 or 100 or 110% of my plan to that 6 weeks? And then another alternative is you negotiate better terms with your vendor. So yes, it's in your building, you're paying to warehouse it, but don't, get extended terms.
But the extreme of that is like you probably see it around holidays, the spirit of Halloween, right? So they do like 600 pop-up stores. They bring in that stuff for 100%. Each of the, right? And they never replenish. They never rebuy. It's a single bet. It's a 6-week season, I think, for the spirit of Halloween. A huge business. They will probably do over $1 billion that way. So it's an exception, but it's an exception that illustrates the rule. It's short season. Buy enough in the beginning. Make your bet. Make sure it's not coming in, in the second half of the season, as it were.
Dmitry, you also beg the question of, do you risk selling out and, oh, well, I could have sold more, but, or do you risk having excess inventory and the clearance markdown on that excess inventory can wipe out the profitability of the item? Or if you've got excess inventory, can you pack it and hold it for a year? So all those elements go into the decision and the risk taking about how you treat highly seasonal product.
So what's the higher risk, Jeff? What would you say the higher risk is on those two scenarios?
Too much. I mean, if you've got pretty good data, every now and then it's okay to sell out.
Right.
But when I see retailers consistently overbuy season after season after season on product that really can't be packed and held, the markdown on that clearance process is hugely expensive. So, and I'm talking mostly apparel here, but if somebody is really good at seasonal conversion, managing the exit of one delivery with the incoming of another delivery, that incoming delivery is the next opportunity to catch a sale. And you might miss a sale or two on the outgoing, but that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
So it really is that, which risk do I want to take? Too little, too much?
Well, and it's good to have a little sense of urgency too. Like when I'm shopping in Costco, I know if there's something I want, I'm going to buy it because when I come back, chances are it may not be there.
Mm-hmm. So some of the highest margins. So there's a difference here. When you're looking at replenishment or even long term, think of spring, summer, it lasts 6 months. There, you probably risk losing sales if you don't have enough inventory. So there, worst case, you're just not quite as effective. But if you're looking at this kind of short events, 2 months fall or a trunk show or a vendor special or something like that, the highest margins we see, short of museums, by the way, that sell, Leonardo da Vinci imprints that only they own, right? But if you take that away, short of museums, the highest margins we see are people that sell out. You will see boutiques that are like, we just have 12 of these. That's it. And by the way, their margin might be like 95%, right? And that's why sometimes you'll see shops with like very little product, especially high-end luxury or stuff like that, because they're promoting artificial scarcity, just like they're promoting artificial seasonality. So if you can manage to plan it well, and you're better off selling out, funny enough, because as Jeff Sward said correctly, otherwise you're killing your margin at the tail end of it, and what would have been very profitable short season now becomes now I gotta clear it at below cost. So
Michele said something
related.
really important there about if there's a lot of excess inventory and the customer can come to expect that incentivizes waiting and buying cheaper. If they also, to her point, know, especially at Costco or any other store for that matter, if they know it's going to sell out by the time they come back, they're incentivized to buy.
You're creating urgency. Yes.
Right. One of my mantras is really to literally create and manage scarcity. It's okay to sell out every now and then for precisely what you guys have just mentioned.
And we had a comment come in on the chat. It came in at 1:30. I just noticed it now. So I'm not exactly sure what specifically we were talking about 7 minutes ago, but Nick said, use the data, not opinions, which is absolutely what we need to do.
And that's something I've been wanting to sneak in here on all this. And I absolutely support selling out. I absolutely do. But we all are always in this 80-20 rule also. And I feel strongly that when you're in season, there's a lot of analysis that needs to occur. You need to, reforecast, not continuously, but throughout the event, 6 weeks or more. How am I doing according to plan? What adjustments do I need to be making based on what's going on? But those top items that are selling out quickly, it's really, really difficult to capture data well on those. That will help you influence your future assortments and buys on similar items. Absolutely positively make notes in a centralized place, like on this date, which was 10 days into my 60-day event, I sold out of item ABC. It was retailing for this. I sold all of them at full retail. It appears that I could have sold X versus Y if I had them. I feel that having more of them would not have compromised another item in that hierarchy. So really, really make good anecdotal notes about those top 10 items, whatever the number is, because capturing that data is very difficult, and you won't remember, and you won't see it in your history. So it sounds antiquated, but do it.
All right, I'm going to keep us moving here as usual. So as if all of that is not complicated enough with all the different layers and the entries and the exits, external factors make everything even more complicated. So first, before we get into this, let's take a quick poll question here. Is the current economic landscape causing you to rethink your open to buy? Let me open this next question here. All right, I just launched it. So again, is the current economic landscape causing you to rethink your open to buy? Answers are yes, I'm pulling back on my highest risk seasonal products. Yes, I'm cutting costs in other areas, but not merchandising. No, it's BAU, business as usual for us. And lastly, I have no idea. Should I be? So go ahead and select which answer is most applicable to your business. The votes are coming in. It's 50-50 split. All right, more rolling in. So this will be interesting. We talked, the four of us talked at length about this the other day, just preparing for today's conversation. And of course, this is a topic that's on everybody's mind and what everybody's talking about, but what are people actually doing? And are you making changes based on this, or are you just not sure what to do and you're sort of sitting frozen, just waiting to see? So we were really interested to see how everybody answers this question. All right, we got 62% voted, so we're missing a couple. Go ahead and I'll leave it up for 10 more seconds. A couple more came in. All right, I'm gonna close it. And let me share. And Dmitry, go ahead, do what you do. All right, no one said I have no idea, should I be?
So that's interesting, right? Everybody's managing risk right now. So these are not terribly surprising. You know, essentially, if you look at it, the numbers, like 3/4 of the people are saying, you know, I'm kind of pulling back, right? That's recessionary. Guys, don't do it, right? You'll tank the economy. But seriously speaking, yeah, everybody's holding their breath. Not everybody. A lot of people are holding their breath in this group that's you know, taking less risk, right? So a couple of things that again, you know, harken back to, I think, the last session where Jeff Sward was sharing his wisdom. Risk is profit, right? And risk is risk, right? So if you pull back on risk management, on the one hand, you survive the bad times, which is like, you know, don't lose the investment. On the other hand, you'll make less money. So every time somebody buys for a seasonal set or one of these artificial synthetic seasons, it's a gamble, right? I'll buy it, and hopefully they'll buy it from me. I have to say that on the larger retailers that we often work with, and again, some of these are a few hundred million, some of these are a few billion, but you know, there's some smaller ones as well. It's an interesting sample. I see mostly the second or third. They're not really, you know, the guys that make really big bets, they're not really pulling back on high risk product. They might be cutting staff. They might not be, you know, investing as much in story design. And a lot of them are saying, you know, whatever happens is going to happen to all of us. And if the tariffs hit, they're going to hit everybody the same way. So that first reaction may be different depending on the kind of average size of the retailer. They have deeper pockets too. And then when they go bust much more loudly. So, but you know, risk goes with profit. Profit often goes with risk. Otherwise, everybody would just be selling basics. So it's an interesting mix here.
And what can you say, Dmitry, about the BAU? 29%.
Well, you know, sometimes things change so fast that you know, I knew a very wise man whose answer on things was, if the answer must be now, the answer is always no. So, you know, it may be just that this stuff is happening, you know, it's happening so fast around politics, economics, trade, that, like, you know, it's up there. It's, you know, it's the clouds, the cirrus clouds in the sky. They may be going 100 miles an hour, and I'm just doing my thing. So I'm probably personally in the third group. Like, you know, what will happen will happen. You just have to be somewhat cautious. But you know, there's definitely awareness of heightened risk. Again, the bigger the guys, the bigger the retailers, and the deeper their pockets, they seem to be less likely to execute strategy number one, which is you know, buy less risky product. They just associate risk with profit.
Yeah, and even when we were chatting earlier this week, we thought that BAU category would be much higher than the 29%. So it's interesting. All right, so Jeff,
Well,
take us through
well,
some of this.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I just wanted to hear that statement again, Dmitry. If I must answer now, the answer is no.
If the answer must be now, then the answer is always no.
Okay. I can see that being useful in life. Thank you.
Somebody with them.
That's another Dmitry nugget. We get quite a few nuggets every session that are memorable. Yeah. So Jeff Sward, you want to walk us through a little bit on predicting demand during economic volatility?
Well, I think Dmitry kind of teed it up very nicely. It's really a question of what kind of risk do you want to take of the economic scenario, meaning some kind of drop in consumer demand, and therefore you've got too much on order, or you're waiting and waiting and waiting and stalling the decision as long as possible, or coming at it from the supply chain point of view, and then going to your supply chain partners and saying, hey, I thought I could use 1,000 units. I'm not sure anymore about that 1,000 number. I'd like to have a trigger point at which point I can say, I want it to be 900 or I want it to be 1,100, but I'm just kind of putting you on notice that that 1,000 number that I gave you is, not as solid as I thought it was. And I think, supply chain partners can be huge in helping mitigate that. What you can't do is, factories that make the product need a certain amount of lead time. So, but if you're buying branded packaged product that's warehoused, there might be some flexibility there. And then on the next point, pulling back on basics versus higher risk products, I'd leave my basic model intact. And because that's operating on a min-max model, I'd let the math kind of does itself there in my mind. Pulling back on higher risk seasonal products might mean that instead of buying 8 customer choices, I'd buy 6. Or if I bought 8, I'd buy, 10 per unit or 10 per choice instead of 12. I would just shave it a little so that if I think there's going to be a drop in demand, I'm going to, mitigate my risk a little bit there. But to Dmitry's point about, do I really want to look like in the eyes of the customer I'm exiting whole categories or anything? Well, no, I want my brand story to be
Remain
intact.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The alternate supply chain options, can I switch factories between countries on a moment's notice in season? Well, no, I'm going to do that on a 1 or 2 year really thoughtful plan. So that's why I said earlier, if you go back and see to what degree you can work with your supply chain partner, that's the first option. How the tariff thing is going to unroll over 1 or 2 years, who knows? But that's something that probably needs to be explored. And I think I'll let Jeff and Dmitry take it from here.
I think it's all been covered and covered well. And again, every season, every year, every whatever has layers and elements of uncertainty. Are there more this year? Who knows, whatever, right? It feels like it to some of us, but I was actually tickled to see the BAU number about where it was, and surprised it wasn't a tad higher, but that's not a horrible strategy. It's really not. And then the last point clearly is have systems and data and analysis in place to plan all this well today for the future, and then react well and and early and frequently in season as well.
You know, if I can put another plug in for planning, you know, to me, if you don't do planning, it's a little bit like running down the street backwards, because you're always looking at what happened. You're not seeing what's one or two steps ahead of you. You know, think of that. And you know, and the faster you run, the more likely you are to fall over. So you know, I always vote for, you know, looking where you're going, and hopefully not looking right in front of you, but looking somewhat forward to anticipate surprises and to kind of plan your route. So you can, you know, you can take that image away. You know, it's there are more severe versions of that having to do with, you know, dropping your belt and so on and so forth. But the, you know, generally, and especially as you try to think through the scenarios going forward, the more you try to take advantage of shorter seasons, that's seasonal presentations that stimulate demand, the more you want to do it deliberately and to plan it out. That's it. So you gain, you know, there's an effort to do it, but the gains can be substantial, again, to the point where, you know, there are entire business models built around that approach. So.
Excellent.
Good. Well, we have 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left. So I'm going to keep us moving here. We did have a couple of questions come in. Keep them coming. Now's the perfect chance to drop any questions in the question pane that we have there on the right side. I wanted to show this slide quickly because, as we mentioned, this is our fourth webinar, and we'll keep doing this for as long as we still have retailers joining us each month. These are the topics we've had. Over the past, we started this in November. So over the past several months, we've had hundreds of retailers who have joined us over the calls, and these are the topics. There's a link there at the top that has all of the different recorded sessions, and we'll keep adding to it. The first one was smarter year-end inventory decisions. Then we had strategy prep for the new year. We moved on to plan for fall 2025 buying season, which I'm sure is still underway. And then, of course, navigating seasonal planning and flow. So again, we have these sessions every month, or about every month-ish. So last poll question, and we really want you to answer this honestly. We want to know if what we're talking about is beneficial. Is this what you guys want to hear? Do you want more? Do you want it to be less high level? You want to get more in the weeds? You know, tell us how you feel these sessions have. Now, even if you only joined us today, that's fine too. Give us your feedback from today. And I'm gonna flip this in just a second, but I will add also, there is either through the question panel or the chat panel, you can drop any comments, open-ended things. If you want to see different things or different topics, help us really help you. I mean, that it sounds cliche, but that really is what we're looking for feedback here on. So let me share this next poll question. By the way, don't feel bad. You won't hurt our feelings. We really want to know if the content that we're going over is helpful for you guys. So again, tell us how our live sessions have been so far. For those of you who have been with us through all of it, and those of you who just joined today, the answers are the content has been helpful. The content has been too high level. Maybe you want to get into more tactical type conversations. The content has been too in the weeds for me to understand. Maybe you just need just to talk through it a little bit more and really understand everything that we're going over here. Or D, the content has been good, but I'd like to see more of ... Let us know. Help us create these topics for the next month and beyond. You can drop it in the chat or the question pane, and I'll even drop my email in the chat here so that everybody can even email me directly and let me know any topics that you'd like to see more of. All right, we have 56 that have answered. So I'll keep it open for just a couple more seconds. Okay, good. Well, guys, no one selected the second or third, so that's good. All right, I'm going to close it now. Anybody else drop in your feedback? All right, let me close it. Let me share it. All right.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
We'll keep it. We'll keep it progressing the way it is, and then certainly those that want to see more of, tell us. Shoot Michele an email. Shoot any of us an email. You'll see those here in a minute, or they're embedded in the old videos also. But let us know what you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I just dropped my I just dropped my email in the chat to everyone. So again, feel free to send me a note and just let us know, because we can really use those questions and that feedback to help guide our future conversations here.
So I'd like to raise the stakes a little bit.
Okay, Dmitry, I expect no less.
If you found this to be useful, tell your friends. We need more people. This is a little bit like the social media thing, right? You know, like us, whatever it is they always do on podcasts. You know, the very idea of this question is that we're insecure, we want to be helpful, and we want as many people as possible to see it, or else we wouldn't be asking you. So, you know, please help us by telling your friends or colleagues, or don't tell your competitors, because, you know, if it's useful, you don't want them to have it, so that the audience grows. Because what will happen is that as the audience grows, we'll put in even more effort. We're thinking of bringing on another panelist from a somewhat different perspective as well that should be helpful. And you know, obviously we do it for free, and we do it to benefit everybody and to spread the word. So please help us build the audience, and they might come up with questions that you will find useful if we answer them as well. So the more people, the merrier.
Yes, and the more feedback, the better too.
Awesome.
And we do try to keep these conversational and not deck heavy with a PowerPoint. You know, we really just want to talk and share nuggets. And even if you walk away from this 45-hour-long session with one new little nugget, if it helps you in your business, then it's worth the time, and it's worth our time too. All right, so next session, the date is set, the topic is pretty well set, unless we get lots of feedback today and we choose to change it. But our next session is not until May 21st. Shameless plug here, our Celerant Client Conference is coming up in the beginning of May, and so we need to bump it a little bit because just of you know, we don't want to be too overloaded. And of course, Dmitry and the guys will be at our conference as well in Florida. So our next session is not until May 21st. It'll be 1 o'clock. We hope to see everybody there. We're planning on focusing on how to train merchants to plan. This session will be a little less not less conversational, but a little bit more tactical, and really give you guys and gals some takeaways and some tactical steps to training your merchants to plan better, picking the right people, setting the right goals, and giving them the right tools. So we have a couple of questions that came in. If anybody else wants to drop one in the chat, feel free. As always, our contact info is here. All of our email addresses are here. Everybody has mine as well. Feel free to reach out with any questions or feedback, or of course, if you want to see a demo of our software, or of course, any of the software here that we're talking about. Let me jump to the questions because we are at time. One question came in quite a while ago, and it is, how do I know, this might be for you, well, it could be for any of you guys, how do I know which products to pull back on? Back when we were talking about how they are responding to economic factors.
Do you know which products to pull back on? Data. You have got to, you know, run reports out of Celerant, run reports out of Buyer's Toolbox. Be brutal, pick the stuff that sells, because, you know, everybody that does a range plan you know, these are the 20 things in the category, 10 things in a category that sold. That's what I'm doing next. You may not be able to fix what's already happened, but you should. You must look forward on the basis of history and plan to do better. So that would be my thing, is how do I know? Look at the numbers, look at the data,
Yeah.
look at the percentage you sold, look at how much you got stuck with. Be brutally honest with yourself.
Well, like we said earlier, data, not opinions.
100%.
All right, we're at time, but one more question that I'll ask. There's a couple others, but just this last one we'll get in. Jeff Sward, I'll send this one your way because you're always talking about the balance, the proper balance. What percent of my product should be seasonal versus basic percentage?
I think that depends entirely on the nature of the product. Could vary dramatically between hard goods, apparel. You know, it's really a function of, to me, balancing it between what you can have that is purely data driven, which is the more predictable products, and how much of your content is guesswork. Fashion is guesswork. So where do you want to strike the balance between data driven and guesswork is the other way to do it. Or how do you pick vendors that have the most flexible time action calendars, the shortest time action calendars, where the shorter the time action calendar, the more data driven you can be. So that's a very tough question to answer in a very nice, neat little package.
Right. Well, thank you for that. All right, well, we will end it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope to see you all in May. Thank you, everybody who joined us here today, Jeff, and Dmitry. Dmitry, I know you're not feeling well, so thank you for not canceling on us and getting through it. Hope to see you all next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
Appreciate your time.